Absolutely.
Woo.
We are live. And as we go live, I got to put this up. We got some, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Welcome to America Heals, everyone. Is he cutting that with a saw? Oh,
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I feel like I've seen that.
Yeah.
This is gonna be awesome.
Is he going to, oh my gosh, I can't wait.
He's measuring with the saw, so he makes sure he's on a saw wide. you
Wow.
know? Yep.
And I'm just waiting for the action move here. What? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. He's got his back brace on too. Look.
He does have a back brace on.
He's
There's
ready to
this
lift.
safety rope,
Yeah.
but you'll notice he doesn't use it for anything. Wait till you see how high this roof is. He's just working on flat-footed. Wait till you see him push.
This is
saw.
on his roof.
I think it's commercial roof. Okay, so he puts the saw down, shoves it off, and watch this fall.
Dude.
It's like a 4-story building. He's just pushing
Oh my
the top
God.
of the edge.
And he just, gets back up there and goes back to work.
Yep.
Dude.
He just keeps getting better. He only does I think he does one more chunk and then it jumps to the next guy.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
If anybody watched my video on Sunday, I was a clown, but I didn't have any system like that going. Look at this guy.
Yeah. So he's doing the same thing, but then he's got a trick where he takes 2 snow shovels and wedges them under it,
It breaks him off.
breaks it off, and then drags it to the edge.
Oh, look at that
Wow.
system.
The narrator says like a refrigerator, and then he's put so much snow off the roof, it's like stacking off the ground now. This is my style.
Look at this guy.
That's how I do it. That's how I do it.
You got to have the right pitch on the roof. There you go. I've seen that one. Oh my gosh.
It
It's
really
one
gets
thing to
through
be
it.
snow too, as long as it's not ice.
Yeah. There's
I
all
can't
kinds of
imagine that
videos
much
like
snow.
this.
That's a lot of snow.
That's a lot.
There's one, I don't think it's in this video, they like break off these huge icicles and it just
Mhm.
smashes the awning clean off the building. See these iron things of the doorways? We had that at East Bay in Wausau, Wisconsin. They had the same things, and it's for exactly that reason. It's because the icicles and ice come off the roof,
Yep.
and you have to have that armored shed to get in. That guy just jumps off a
I
roof.
have a really stupid question. But
Yeah.
I don't live around snow. Does snow after it melts create flooding when it's that much of it?
It
Or
can,
is
Yeah.
depending on if you don't have drainage for it. You bet.
It's-
Okay.
It's generally more of a problem because the valley that the water needs to go through is still snow covered, so it just sort of kind of swampifies. But snow itself just can't melt that fast, because every bit of snow is a piece of ice, right? So as the temperature comes up, it's all kind of keeping each other cold and it's sort of slowly thawing. But what will happen is you'll have like slush dams and ice dams, and that's when you can have major flooding problems because a big piece of ice breaks free, wedges under a bridge, and then it starts flooding over. And,
This dude's got the machine for it.
No,
That
this
thing
guy's
is
got.
crazy.
He's got an. Ironically, based on our topic, I noticed he has Asian features and an Asian hat. I mean, I guess there's large parts of China that get tons of snow, huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because at first I was like, I thought that was a sun hat. Like I thought that's the type of hat you wear to keep sun off. But then I noticed I've got maybe a little better resolution. He seems to have kind of those types of features too. So that could be. Yeah, I mean, China goes all the way to Mongolia and Siberia and all that, right?
Oh, for sure, man.
Yeah.
It's enormous. All kinds of topography.
Oh, let's
Yeah.
just leave. Talk like this, nice and cozy over here.
Right? Isn't this
like
nice? Instead of dealing
Doesn't this
with all
make
the
you happy you
bullshit
don't
to go
have
through?
Yeah. It makes it feel nice to be in Georgia. So he's just using that huge sled thing to both cut and I think that's my preferred method, this big shovel thing he's got. Because he's just using it to cut and pry and everything.
It also looks like something you could ride down if you do it right and you build the right, hill.
Yeah.
When you're done for the day, you just
yeah.
jump on it and go down.
Definitely could be a Blung Himalayas.
Well, I'd like to welcome everybody tonight. As you notice, the title on the show tonight is Racism, the American Addiction, and we're going to talk about that tonight. But first, we're just watching people move snow, which is always a great sport. Does not get enough copy time in terms of international press, but it's magic.
It is.
Have you moved any snow this year, Jeff?
Yeah, we've had one snow that was good enough to use the snow blower. I put about 3 inches off the Now watch this. Watch this.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh!
If you don't live where there's snow, that happens almost every time. You're
Sure
shoving
does.
the end of your driveway, and then the truck comes by and puts a 2-foot
it
berm
back.
across the end, and it's really heavy. The stuff the plow puts off is really heavy.
Oh my gosh, the
Yeah.
stuff I dropped off my roof the other day, I was so packed when I had to
I
move
like this
the
one.
second
This looks
time.
like your house. In fact, is this you?
Yeah, I wished I had that.
He's grabbing onto a basketball goal using a parasailing fan.
Dude. Oh my god. He's just leaning into it. Wow. Ace, I hope this is giving you all kinds of ideas for the Georgia life that you have, that you don't have to do any of this.
So nice.
Yeah, this
This
is
is
one of
gonna
those
be
runners.
bad.
If any of that happened here,
Well, that took
This
the
is
end
gonna
off.
be bad.
That was a collapse. That was a collapse.
Oh yeah, collapsed
Well,
in front of the building.
Ace, do you get any snow at all, or
we do, but usually the city doesn't deal well with snow, so a small amount of snow will cause a lot of outages.
Yeah.
And because we're not experienced with snow, we don't have snow tires, no snow chains. We don't know what they even do. We probably not. I don't know anybody that's ever taken snow off the roof. It's not a thing.
I've never done that before, but we had so much wet stuff as we began, and that's what this stuff is. It starts out with wet snow and it packs like that. Normally, snow isn't that bad,
No.
but when it gets so packed, it does these kinds of things. So
Yeah, normally if it's light and fluffy, you get some good wind, it'll clear if high wind will clear your roof for you.
totally, normally that's what happens, but we got.
He thought he was getting taken to the ground.
I did too.
I like this one too. You have to be really experienced with this machine to make sure you don't do this wrong. This is a good way to get terminated if you're off by about a half inch. Isn't that nice?
It is, and yet you're right. You would get terminated if you're out.
Yeah, you miss it by 2 inches.
Ask the question:
Yeah.
Why are you doing that? Right? Like, oh,
So that's a tennis court or whatever where they're inflated.
oh yeah. That dude at the bottom's about to get hosed.
The guy jumping's about to get on his butt too.
How do you not lose your balance? Wow. I like the music too. That's a nice touch.
It does.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's a kickoff for tonight, everybody. We get going and it's oddly satisfying. It just is, It's a good way to kick off the show. Welcome to the show tonight, everybody. Episode 26 of America Heals. We've got Ace with us tonight. Welcome, Ace.
Hey.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, I made it. I was working late. I thought I wasn't going to make it. So.
I'm glad you're here. And we got Zach with us tonight from sunny CA. It's still sunshine coming through your window over there.
yes, sir? Thanks for having me again. I think
Glad you're with us.
It's been a while since I've been on with Ace, I think.
I'm glad.
Yeah, it has been.
And then Mr. Jeff, are you recovering from the Shockers' recent loss there tonight?
Oh, I don't give a shit.
There you go. That's the best attitude to have.
No, I'm not a Shockers fan.
Okay. All right.
I just assume if my team's not in it, do the best they can, but I don't know I don't know a player's name or anything.
What's your team?
K-State, which we're not even in the
K-State.
tournament.
Yeah, no.
So I sort of
Nor is
usually-
Iowa State.
it's pretty common in Kansas, to be a K-Stater and kind of pull for KU during the tournament because they're always there. They're always there. We were reading over the seeds. Being from the Midwest, Kansas has been, it's like 89 is when they started seeding all the teams. And since 89, they've always been in the top half of seeds. Like 8's been their worst seed. They've had like half of their seeds have been ones. It's just ridiculous. So
Yeah,
they're
it's kinda
always there. Yeah.
Kind of like the Yankees. They're just always there.
Around here, they're definitely our version of the Yankees.
Who's
They're
winning?
there.
Who's going to win? I don't follow.
I think I have Illinois. I have Illinois going a long way because, first of all, I think they're pretty. They're a one seed and people like them.
Yeah.
And I used to watch them as a kid, so they're sort of my. Yeah, there you go. Birdman's got it.
Birdman's
I'd love to
think
see
I
the
picked
Illini,
them too.
but
They got a good
Just-
team.
just for the personal connection. I mean, no real great answer except for like I've been in what used to be called the Assembly Hall. They've now named it after a donor, but and Indiana kept theirs the Assembly Hall, but Illinois changed it to something else. Birdman will probably know.
Yeah,
but I used to go to the Assembly Hall as a kid and watch the band. You know, they played a lot of Blues Brothers songs because it was
Sure.
like '86. You know, it was right after Blues Brothers fame. So they play all those "Can't Turn You Loose" and all those great Blues Brothers songs. Yeah, so local connection.
So I just want to lift up tonight that as we go into the show, I know that as a white male, the things that we can say around the issue of race, how do I want to say this, can be meaningless. Let me put it that way. It can be absolute vapid bullshit because in many ways we're especially white males are very much seen as part of the problem, even if I'm not an avid or active racist. And so one of the things that I've been dealing with over these past few weeks is this concept of there's a word that I've been sort of stumbling across, and it's the idea of neighbor justice. And the idea of neighbor justice, I think it's definitely something that Martin Luther King talks about, especially in the letter from the Birmingham jail, where he talks about that his greatest adversary or greatest adversary is not the word that he uses.
What does he say? The
greatest liability maybe is the white liberal.
The white moderate, I think.
The white moderate. That it's not the white liberal as well, but the white moderate. But that it was not the Southern racist or the American racist that was his true enemy or adversary, because he knew where they were coming from. But that it was the white moderate, the white liberal, the white moderate is a better term.
Well, that's the one he uses.
That's the one he uses. All right, thank you. And basically what he says is he doesn't know if those people are with him or not. And he's sitting in a jail as he writes that letter, and he's basically calling out those who say they're his allies. And so that leaves the reader or those of us who are left with this situation to really ponder how it is that we can help the situation, how it is that we can engage the situation. And as we saw the other night in Georgia with these murders, with this domestic terrorism that happened, one of the things that the white moderate, and especially the media, which is full of, to be fair, or to be, I guess, very inclusive, white moderates, it's a lot of well-educated liberal folks. The media coverage of this event has not utilized the words domestic terrorism and has not framed this conversation in the way that needs to be framed. And so tonight we're going to talk about this because I see a straight line from the terrorists on January 6th. I see a straight line before January 6th and after, with the rise of Trump's language around the virus and language around giving people license to take the law into their own hands. Tonight, we'll have to find it, but I'd like to look at the video clip of Ron Johnson, Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, talking about how he didn't have any fear on the day of January 6th because he knew that they were America-loving patriots and that they loved police, even though they killed police. But he would have been very upset and nervous had it gone another way, and there would have been Black Lives Matter folks coming into that Capitol to do the same thing. There is a pocket that has exploded where this racist rhetoric was in the shadows. Trump was the clarion call of the language, and he was sort of the forebearer of the license to play this game in public. And now that Trump is gone, we're watching the fruit of his work. We're watching the anarchy and the chaos and the murder and the bedlam that's coming from the American right. And it is all about racism because, quite frankly, white people and the idea of white fragility, white people are very scared and they're frightened. And so they're lashing out all over this country against Asian Americans. There's so many videos of sad sack pieces of you-know-what who are like knocking down 91-year-old Chinese guys, killing them, putting them in comas, hitting them from the back, of course, because they aren't strong enough or smart enough or have the wherewithal to look people in the face. So I'm frustrated, I'm mad, and I want to talk about it tonight because there isn't enough going on here. And I'll say one more thing about Periscope, and that is Periscope evidently, and I'm speaking directly to Twitter and Periscope, Periscope evidently has a high lust towards racists. Because every time I've gone on Periscope for the last 3 days, the highest racist conversations are at the top of the search. When you go through and scroll through, there's like 4 or 5 like just diehard evil racists talking about don't get your vaccine, or the Jews are in charge of the country, or whatever lies that they're telling. And Periscope, as a medium, from what I can tell, supports this because of the way that they package their product. So I'm going to go ahead and put that out there. I hope someone hears it, and I don't give a shit what they think because I'm watching it and I see it every single day.
It kind of probably points to why they're getting rid of it.
Could be.
It's probably they bought the company and they never put any money into it. And I'm assuming there's no admins. There's definitely not enough AI to catch it. The reporting structure is non-existent on it. It's probably why they're getting rid of it altogether, because it's a nuisance to take care of.
Ace, I think that's true, man. And you're much more tech savvy than I. I have reported people. Tell me what that does. Can you talk about that?
Basically, what it does is it sends a ticket through an algorithm that makes a decision what needs to happen before it hits a human being.
Okay.
And then the human being will make a decision based on what he's seeing. They could probably pull, since everything is recorded, they could probably pull it, see it, see if there's more. And the algorithm has basically designs where if the same person is being reported multiple times, that's why they say report. The more reports, the algorithm will bump it up to a human. Because obviously a human there can't be an admin on every one of these chats listening to the whole thing. We wouldn't even want that. So it really but unlike Twitter, which is text, much easier to do an algorithm because it reads all the content. This is voice. Oh. So voice is much harder because then I don't know if they convert voice into text so the algorithm can read it so they can know what we're saying. My assumption is they don't.
I would assume not.
I assume they don't. So because of that, the only way that you can get rid of these people are people reporting them, and then Twitter having the structure and enough admins to actually follow through, which they don't because they don't care about this product. Now, once it goes on live, and it's just like forums, a lot of these Periscopes, they'll have 30 people. I mean, 30 people is not that many people. On Twitter, it's much quicker to check. That's why Facebook does these forum sweeps, because there'll be a whole bunch of groups, and the groups will hide inside of groups, and Facebook will do a sweep, and they'll find groups that are like QAnon through an algorithm, and they'll wipe it out. So, but I think with video, it's much harder, and I don't think they want to reach into the whole converting our voice into text either.
Yeah.
I think then that it gets a little creepy
and expensive.
I think now I think the technologies now they have it. It's Twitter. Okay. They obviously will have it, but I don't think they want to do that. So.
Okay. Zach, you're going to say something? Maybe not. Well, anyway, I just think that we need to. I guess I just feel like we need to recognize what's going on, and it feels like after the Trump machine has abandoned or been kicked out of power, the people that are left in power don't have a second act, and so the way that they're still trying to find love from this rabid base is to be as outlandish as Trump and to accept behavior that is outlandish as Trump. And I think it's a terrible recipe for their politics, but I also think that it's going to have significant ramifications over the course of this summer. I'm very worried about when the weather warms up and what some of these groups have planned. We know today that someone got arrested outside of Kamala Harris's home, the vice president's home, with an AR-15. So the seditionists, the anti-American QAnon terrorists that are among us are active. We cannot take our eye off the ball, and we cannot leave this subject because it's the subject they keep bringing up. They don't bring up other things. They bring up racism. It's their go-to.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about that?
They don't have anything to run on, so they don't want to run on politics, because when you run on politics and policy, it's much easier to break it into pieces, and there's naysayers on both ends. So there's always money involved, and people don't like spending money, or there's taxes. So they run on no policy, and they run on just a couple of things that their base just eats, like it makes it more important than other things, which is racism, guns. They run on these things more, and then they push them, and that's their policy. And immigration, I forgot about immigration, but in the other way, not in the good way.
Right.
So they're not. I mean, they're pushing towards no on everything. That's why what I mean by no, not in the good way, because I don't really think that you could split up this country any way you want it, but I don't think even any one of us would think that there's a huge percentage of people that are completely against no immigration, like all guns, no gun reform. I mean, these are not popular policies. It's like 10%. Most of Americans want immigration reform. Most of Americans want gun reform. Keep your guns, but certain guns shouldn't. We're not in, guns of war shouldn't be out there. Make sure that the right people. This guy just got a gun. Now the right will say he got it legally, but then I would say he went out. He's a first-time gun buyer. He went out and he got a gun within the day. It was the same day. Maybe if there was a delay process, maybe he would have thought about it and quote, he wouldn't. I don't know. Then maybe he couldn't have done that. Maybe there would have been a red flag. I don't know, but maybe it's just not that great of a policy for a first-time gun buyer to go in and buy a car. I can't do that with a lot of things if you're a first-time buyer. There's always flags. Go to try to buy a car for the first time. See how that works out for you. It's not easy.
It's not quick.
Ways. But guns, no problem. Go in there, give them cash, boom, guns. Maybe there should be gun reform. Like, we're not stretching it. We're not saying let's go get everybody's gun. That's ridiculous. I think that's not my policy. And I would say it's ridiculous to take people's guns away, because that's not how this country is founded. And I think I don't like extremes of any side. I just want middle, but sometimes middle means completely different. It just depends on where the middle is. And that is the problem that I'm struggling. And I listened to your last show. It was great. And I felt, I forgot his name.
Dave.
And I felt like he has no party.
Right.
He has no party to even come close to. And it would be nice if we had a party that people that don't agree to the left, don't agree to the right, they can go, this is my party, finally. But it's tough sometimes.
Yeah.
And a party that can really just talk about the policy that they want to be about.
Don't talk about anything other than policy. Policy that helps people. And as a libertarian, he would say less government. But I'm not. But at least policy, even he would agree he wants policies that help people, not government overstep, not government doing something that gets into calling things the Chinese virus or the Kung flu. That's not a government. That's not what our government should be saying or doing, because it's not a policy to do it that way.
Right.
You're only doing it because you want to flare up the anger. So, because the best way for people not to be angry at you is you point anger at someone else. It's so much easier. So when you call it those names, then that's what happens.
Yeah, planted those seeds on purpose. He gave this group of people fodder to make memes and jokes and have in their hip pocket when they needed it. And that, I mean, Trump is a master at doing that. He armed his people with rhetoric and reasons to hate. He gave them both. And the rhetoric is just as dangerous as the reasons to hate.
And direction.
And the direction. You bet. He aimed where they should go. Zach, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, my internet's pretty messed up, so sometimes things are jumping around a little bit. Sorry if I come off late or not.
You're coming off smooth, by the way.
All right, good to know.
On our side, you're good.
Yep.
So, I mean, when Ace was talking, it was really reminding me of, I believe this happened today, maybe it happened yesterday, the Violence Against Women Act. Republicans refused to vote in favor of protecting domestic violence victims on the grounds that they didn't like a clause in the bill that said convicted domestic violence abusers should not be allowed to get a gun. That was too far for Republicans.
Wow.
That is ridiculous, and that is what's wrong with our society. When you have a party who's willing to say, I think domestic abusers deserve to have guns. Mm-hmm. That's what the Republican Party is right now.
Convicted.
The court system has ruled, and we are a land of courts, which is why I don't like when people say, oh, that judge is bought. We're a land of courts. When they say something, that's it. We agree.
That's it. Yep.
That's how our system works. So when
I'm sure
that guy should not get a gun because isn't it a felony? I don't understand how he would get a gun.
No, he could be convicted of harassment. Yeah, he could be convicted of harassment. But I think we all know, if a married woman is killed, the statistics are overwhelming that it's her husband. I mean, it's like 75% or something. Because women just don't violently get killed generally, right? Men tend to be fighting in drug situations and robbing each other and all those things. So women just generally don't get violently killed unless they're being killed by their spouse. And of course, domestic violence is extremely prevalent in those situations. I mean, I'm sure there's times where some guy that never lifted his voice and still went homicidal. But yeah, so convicted domestic violence people are definitely much more likely to kill their spouse than anybody else. I mean, a huge surprise the Republicans don't want to set a reasonable line for gun ownership.
And it's amazing who they're protecting. That's why I don't.
Right, convicted domestic abusers.
Even if you agree with, even if you agree with that, think about who you're protecting. I don't understand why you would have a policy that protects a person that abuses women. Why would you have a policy that protects that person?
And we'd need a lawyer, but
who in our society is okay with having a policy that protects a person that's committing a crime?
We'd need a lawyer, but I do believe even with the felony, once you complete your entire sentence, felons can own guns. You can't own a gun while you're on probation or parole, but when you're actually completely released from felony charges, when you've completed your felony punishment, you can own guns, at least in many states.
I think it's up to a state because I think that like even in Georgia you can't.
Well, and there's an enfranchisement issue here with the extreme measures that they will go to protect or arm or facilitate the arming of a person. But in the same minute, they're working diligently to take the vote away from many of those same people. Like the support of the Second Amendment for everyone, and then the destruction of voting rights that they're doing at the same time is hand in hand. And it literally is the country that they want. They want they don't believe in democracy. We heard this said at the very end of the campaign over and over again by a lot of people publicly. America's not a democracy. Then why do we vote?
They don't believe in democracy.
No, they hate democracy because democracy can stand up to these things.
Trump and his team kept on dropping the hints of the non-democracy throughout the election. Let's not forget that they kept on doing that whole continuation and we will move to a second term. That's not just said just because. That's
Right.
a hint in maybe we should just keep the guy that we like, and that's it. Why do we have to get another guy if we're all happy with him?
Yeah. Chill Out got muted. Don't worry about Chill Out.
And you know, I always even to
He should be embarrassed, obviously.
Dunce.
even to people that I talk, I have said this many times, is this country's history is not long enough and strong enough politically to not break. I mean, Russia has a history that's a lot longer. That system has gone through different styles of government. Every country that we can think of is probably 10 times stronger. It might be broken, but it's longer. They've learned their lessons. Our history is much shorter, much compact, and it was created by a different form of people before more people came to this country from other regions. So you got to be careful. Everybody always just thinks that democracy is just, this is the way it's always going to be. It's not true. Like if they had killed, I say, you know, the whole point of the insurrection was to just stop the count. If they had killed one senator or one congressperson, it would allow Trump to call martial law, which he would have done. We know that because Michael Flynn told us that the whole time when they were pushing him, shouldn't Trump call the martial law? And they were like, he can't, but he really can't because there needs to be like a terrorist attack or something. Right. One congressperson goes down. He calls martial law, and then you don't know what will happen because we've also realized that this country's rules are not really written down. They're all like, what do you like to say, Marty? They're all based on what we think people should do. But once you keep on reaching towards the top, there's no rules and regulations. You could do whatever you want.
Yeah, it's built on an honor system that there's going to be some sort of a code of ethics between people, and that's gone.
Yeah,
I mean, look at Myanmar, or is it Myanmar?
Mm-hmm. Myanmar.
Yeah. That's what they did. They announced martial law. They said the country, like I listened to the whole thing. They basically said the election was fraudulent. They had all the people come in for the count, and then they announced martial law when all the people were there. They arrested all of them and said, this has been a fraudulent election. We're going to investigate this. During this investigation, we're under martial law.
I will respond to Birdman with a quick. He says, what does this have to do with racism? Fair question. The entirety of the Trump administration was about racism. The entirety of unbridled capitalism is about slavery. The entirety of this country was built by murdering and enslaving indigenous peoples and bringing people from Africa under the guise of Christianity into this place. And so Trump's entire magnetism was in white power, or make America great again. In other words, let's put slavery back in place, and don't think that's not what he has planned. They all want slavery. They want cheap labor. They don't want to pay for it. They would love to be able to use prisoners in their pizza joints and in their hotels. They'd love that.
Yeah.
They would love slaves. I'm naming it tonight, everybody. The Republican Party is a pro-slavery party. They're pro-abuse. They're pro-racism. And by racism, I'm not just talking about the platitude word. I'm talking about impactful, keeping people of color in different parts of the town, keeping them separated from other parts of white culture. And so much of this comes out of the Christian church. I'm a Lutheran pastor. I believe in this day and age, most of Christianity is a white supremacist movement. It's not about the gospel. It's not about loving your neighbor. It's not about bearing one another's burdens, as it says in the book. It's about power, privilege, and control. Most Christian families are in a war in amongst themselves. And I loved what happened on Fox News this week when when these Republican idiots who are starting to figure out that they've burned themselves in a corner and are never going to win another election outright. And now all of a sudden, the baby boomer Republicans want the Gen Xer Republicans to save their ass. As a Lutheran, as a middle-aged Lutheran pastor who's been one of the young guys for my whole career, I've been told that 1,000 times. Marty, it's your generation's job to save the church. Well, are you going to fucking help out? Are you going to do? No, those days are past, but it's your job to save it. Guess what? Gen X ain't saving shit. Gen X is going to watch these institutions burn. The Republican Party is burning alive as we sit here.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with our presidential politics in the next election, because the Republican primary season coming into 24 is going to be, it's going to be the end of their party. It's going to happen before our very eyes.
Well, hopefully in 22.
Maybe 22.
I hope it's just the 22, and then we can get out of it. Because by 22, if they lose, if they don't win the House and they lose the Senate to more seats, which is likely, the House is really the only problem, because it's not as easy for Democrats to win the House because of gerrymandering. So really hard, and the election that's coming up is not towards the Democratic side. I mean, we're by normal counts, you're going to lose by like 4 seats. So that means you lose like 9 or 10 seats. So, but we could still turn around. But if that makes my point. If that's the presumption and they go into the election and they lose, that's a third cycle of losses. And even the Republicans will not be able to go, we got to keep on pushing, because they lost this election. It's actually technically the 4th, but I don't think the last one is counted.
Right.
So they'll go, it'll be the election, the Senate, the House that they lost the original time, and then Georgia again. So and then you would lose these. Now you're really on a big losing streak. You got to fire the coach at that point, right?
Yeah.
If you're losing 5 in a row, like they're doubling down on Trump right now. They're doubling down on this. If they lose in 22, they can't quadruple down on it. I mean, they're going to alienate everyone. And I'm assuming that's the play you're getting from that's the play you're getting from what's his name?
I've got Ron Johnson queued up here.
Yeah.
Then adding this.
The table's been turned, and President Trump won the election, and those were tens of thousands of Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters. I might have been a little concerned.
Democratic lawmakers accusing Johnson of racism.
Can you find the full? Because what he says before that is worse.
I don't know.
Sorry.
There's also my boy. Yeah, I was finding it while we were talking, so I didn't know that was a super short clip. I assume it doesn't come back to give him any longer clip. No, that should be it. I was going to say Chip Roy, who I've now nicknamed Chip O'Roy, like Chips Ahoy. He's the one that said, in Texas, we get a rope and an oak tree and do justice. I thought that was about the most extraordinary, hateful thing that's probably been said by a senator in probably 30 years.
Well, that's what I mean, Jeff.
I would suggest he probably doesn't even know what he did was wrong because he's such an ass.
We doubled down on it. He doubled down on it. He knows. This is what I'm saying. Every single one of these guys knows it. They know. They may not know the depths that it hits people, but they know they're pulling it. It's the life cycle of gaslighting. It's a power move that you do. I don't know how to describe it. When you're dealing with somebody who won't come straight on, they drop these gaslights around and they cause a conflict. Everybody in the room just all of a sudden feels the racism that just came out, or everybody feels gross inside. What do I got? Ace, hold on. Let me find it here.
You got it, Ace?
Yeah, here we go. Listen to this.
There's no way people you go to work with every day really think that you and I are white supremacists because we believe in conservative values, right?
No, and let's face it, I'm also criticized because I've made the comment that on January 6th, I never felt threatened. because I didn't. And mainly because I knew that even though those thousands of people there were marching to the Capitol were trying to pressure people like me to vote the way they wanted me to vote, I knew those were people that love this country, that truly respect law enforcement, would never do anything to break a law. So I wasn't concerned. Now, had the tables been turned, and Joe, this get me in trouble. Had the tables been turned and President Trump won the election, and those were tens of thousands of Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters, I might have been a little concerned.
This is where the Republican Party has gone. They are.
I've got my boy Chip O'Roy here too. Maybe I'll call him Old Roy, like the really cheap dog food.
That's the worst.
Chip Old Roy, everybody.
Race-based violence, and their families deserve justice. And it's the case what we're talking about here with the tragedy, what we just.
Oh my gosh, it ran perfect a second ago.
Atlanta, Georgia. I would also suggest that the victims of cartels moving illegal aliens deserve justice.
Give me a second. Let's make sure my settings are right. Yeah, it's right. I have no idea why. I literally just played it while Ace was playing his.
Texas, they're getting absolutely decimated by what's happening on our southern border. Deserve justice. The victims of rioting and looting in the streets last week, businesses closed, burned. Last summer, deserve justice.
That's what's so important.
Right.
That's always so important to them, isn't it? That car business.
About find all the rope in Texas and get a tall oak tree. We take justice very seriously.
Yeah, get rope on an oak tree. That's justice.
It actually kind of works.
As a senator, he just said, "Get rope on an oak tree." That's how you dispense justice. In Texas, that's what we say. We say lynch him. In our federal government, that guy doesn't understand what lynching was. Doesn't understand it.
Tangerell asks a good question. I'm sorry, Jeff and Zach, I'm going to put this over you for a sec. Why does he even pretend that he's not racist? I think that's a very fair question.
Well,
very few people call themselves racist. I don't think David Duke calls himself racist.
Right.
That's the answer. No one calls himself a racist. They just are racist, but they think they're right. They think their perception of the world is right, and lynchings were some sort of tool of justice in this idiot's head. He doesn't understand that lynchings were a mob and therefore counter justice in every single fucking way. Justice is not just a guy killed somebody and got killed. That's not justice. Justice is you get your day in court. You get to plead your case. You get to defend yourself. You get adjudicated. You get judged. You get punished. You serve your punishment. You maybe move on with your life. I don't even want to pretend that I understand what all the lynchings were for, but I assume many of them were for like looking the wrong way or touching property that wasn't theirs or something really absurd. Not the kind of things that required capital punishment.
Being a person of color,
Talking
looking
to
at
a white woman.
Yeah, talking to a white woman, looking at a white woman, being in town after dark, things like that. There were lots of. So obviously, a rope and an oak tree has never dispensed justice. The way I understand justice, but apparently this congressman, I'm sure he's a congressman because I've never heard of him before.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Chip O'Roy, I'm going to call him. I'll never forget him now. Just get ready for his next time he wants to talk about something. How he's going to use lynching to solve some problem. Yeah, we've gone across a lot of topics. It sounds like Zach's already too. The only thing I'd really like to say, because yes, us discussing racism is a bit hollow. I mean, obviously we only know what we know from personal accounts of other people experiencing things, us personally witnessing things. The one thing I will say is I watched that video the other day. It was one of the ones that keeps cycling is there's a man spraying sanitizer on an Asian man standing in front of the door of a subway car that seems to be in motion. He's talking to the guy like he needs to move or whatever. And I started thinking, like, what would I have done if I was there? Why wasn't anyone else taking action and whatever? And obviously there's childish responses like someone should have attacked the guy with the spray or pushed him down or whatever. But really, honestly, that's an escalation. I mean, the guy was definitely being bad, but he wasn't being violent. He was just being very, very hateful. And so
it's violent when he sprays Febreze in the man's face. Isn't that violent?
Well, it's not as violent as me punching him in the ear and rupturing his eardrum.
Okay, then a can of Raid. I mean, is there a difference?
Well, I have how I would handle it. That's where I'm going. Don't.
All right.
I'm on a road
Sorry.
here. The way I would handle it if I was in that subway car tomorrow and that same thing happened is I think I would walk up, introduce myself to the Asian man, and then just stand next to him staring at the idiot with the spray. You know, that's being an ally. That's saying I'm going to go stand in that man's shoes. I'm going to stand with him. And if this guy gets violent, then it'll be 2-on-1 and we'll figure it out then. But, you know, that's being an ally. Not calling, and I don't even think I'd even scream. I think there's also a lot of value in just kind of pulling the white privilege card and just walking in the middle of the situation. What's going on here? Why aren't we all getting along? And just gum the works up, you know? Why aren't we all getting along? Who started what? You know, just play dumb and just make them all explain themselves. Just pull your white privilege card. Just be like, I'm the white moderator. What's going on here? And just grind the thing to a stop. You know, that there's a lot of value in that. And then, hey, if all else fails, you know, help the Asian guy beat the crap out of the other guy. You know? But I mean, this is important. I think there's a lot of value there. First of all, of course, there's also reporting it, you know, attempting to somehow get attention. I don't even know if trains have conductors anymore, but, you know, trying to get help from some sort of authority. But, you know, in the scenario there, you know, it was disinfecting spray. I think just walking up next to him and saying, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? And like I say, I would introduce myself to the Asian man. Hi, I'm Jeff. He goes, hey, I'm Scott. Cool. Go stand next to Scott and look at the other guy. So clearly I've just built sides. I'm with Scott. What's your problem? You know, if you ask me if I want to know his name, I'd say, no, I don't want to know your name. What are you doing?
You know, it's not just that. Even when you don't encounter those situations, if you hear anyone say something like China virus, Kung flu, any of these hateful stereotypes, shut it down then. Just don't give anyone the space to say that, because it shouldn't be said. And, you know, if you're okay with kind of transitioning to Atlanta.
Go for it.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why I wanted to, or really want this topic to be brought up is the other day there was a domestic terror attack in Atlanta where you had a white gunman kill 6 Asian women along with 2 other Americans. And the way it was reported in the media at the time was absolutely disgusting and a failure of our systems. They did not lead with domestic terrorism, and they barely led with Asian. I think the New York Times got it the closest when they said Asian bias. There was most of the headlines read something along the lines of shooting in Atlanta, 8 dead. And then the New York Times had potential Asian bias. It is not a potential Asian bias if a man specifically targets Asian establishments and kills mainly Asian women. That's not a bias. That's not just six or 8 people dead. That is a targeted domestic terror attack on American citizens. And so I have a big problem with the media right now for how they are handling that.
Amen.
And we have seen them handle things poorly before with the insurrection. They did not call it an insurrection when it was an insurrection. So we're seeing this go on and on. It's not just Fox News that makes these mistakes. It's the more liberal media outlets that also claim to try to be from this objective place. But really, we need to be objective and just call shit what it is.
Yep.
There is a rising domestic terror threat. And this is backed by the FBI. I mean, they are saying that the biggest threat to America right now is the rise in white domestic terror in our country. And that needs to be called out, and it needs to be said in no uncertain terms.
And the fact that it's not is proof that there's a game being played. It's not a mistake. It's a choice. There was a reason that the next day on January 7th, every single paper in the United States used the word mob. They didn't use the word insurrection on their front page. They said mob storms the Capitol. Every one of them. Who chose the word mob? I didn't go to bed thinking that was a mob. I went to bed thinking that was a small army that had been sent to kill our government. It wasn't a mob. It acted like a mob at times. It acted like a well-organized machine at other times. It was an army. And the slow burn, and what did we hear today or yesterday, whenever it is, they're saying, oh, well, there were like 800 people that got into the Capitol, but we're just not going to be able to arrest them all because we might get 400 or so, but we can't get them all. What is this? What is this slow burn that they're doing to us? Whether it's the Capitol insurrection or whether it's these rather these other domestic terrorists, because that's what these racial crimes are. They're domestic terrorism. They're taking a political viewpoint and they're acting on their own in the streets. And then the final piece is, and I said this about this dude the other day, he was doing that to prove himself to someone else. That kid was a low-end soldier. That's how we have to look at this. We're going to find out, I don't know, we're going to find out that this guy has been long involved in QAnon and craziness and malicious shit. We're going to find it out in about 3 weeks after the fact. We won't have our pearls clutched by then because we're not hearing it all at once.
Is it also the issue that it's more of there's no leader on the, so it's individual. We know it's not, but let's say it's individual acts. So calling it a terrorist act is hard because there's not a terrorist group. Is that the issue that we're having? Because there's no real. I'm just saying, like, on the logic of it.
Not a bad thought.
Because think about it this way. They don't also call it like a terrorist act when there was the Las Vegas shooting, right? That guy, how many killed people did he mowed people down? Like
he was white though, right?
There was no ethnic diversity in that situation.
Right.
But
this is hold on, this
point.
is the common trend that you're going to see. When you look at a white person who does a mass shooting, at worst, it'll be called a hate crime. Whenever it's a brown person who does any type of mass shooting, it is domestic terrorism. And domestic terrorism is a harsher charge. So you're going to see that very consistently.
How about that sheriff's department spokesman that said this man had a terrible day and this is how it turned out? Like, what?
Yeah, and
you guys do that press conference?
Yeah, that dude's in on it. That thumb is in on it, man.
Well, there's he posted on his Facebook page a picture of him buying a T-shirt that had the Corona beer as, a graphic of the Corona beer, and underneath it said imported from China, CHY-NA. So, yeah. So, that's just another example of how white supremacy and how racism has infiltrated our police forces and why so many people don't trust the police right now. There needs to be a better job at filtering this.
If you had been a young Muslim American, it would have been
already been gone.
Terrorist attack, hateful person, hates America, hates Asians, hates everybody. We've locked him up. We've solved it. Everybody. It would have been completely and totally different. But because it's a white guy, well, we think he was having some challenges and all that. Well, yes, everybody that picks up a gun and shoots 5 people is having mental challenges. That's foregone. That's a foregone conclusion. But that doesn't mean they're not a terrorist or a homicidal maniac or a lot of other things. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to say we had a really bad day. And by the way, a friend of the show, Luke, pointed out that there were 2 locations, right? There was 2 locations that were across the street from each other and another location. And those locations were a 50-minute drive apart. So he also didn't just snap in a car and shoot up 2 places. And
he was driving to another location.
Yeah, he drove 50 minutes. And he was on his way somewhere else. So he shot up one place. I don't know which one had 2 and which one had 1, but he drove 50 minutes, shot, and was then driving again. In other words, even if he'd gone criminally insane and shot up a Walmart or something, this is like he did that, got in a car and drove 50 minutes and did it again. I mean, that's a whole different level. Like, criminal insanity is like you come home, you see someone in bed with your wife, and in a fit of anger, you kill him. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a defense. I mean, you lost control of your emotions. It wasn't a plan. You grabbed something handy and you hit him in the head and it killed him. That's a defense. I mean, you probably will still go to jail, but it is a defense. It probably keep you from getting electrocuted. But, driving 50 minutes in between, that's not a momentary rage thing. That was a plan. He knew what he knew what he wanted to do. And, maybe he did frequent all these parlors and maybe he has some parallel issue, but I would like to also point out, I think to Ace's point, I apologize for cutting you off. The guy in Vegas that shot a bunch of people at a concert, that can still be a terrorist just because it wasn't racially motivated or ethnically motivated. And this could be an act of terrorism against Asians, even if when we get all the way to the bottom, he says, no, I was a patron of all these massage parlors and it destroyed me financially and da-da-da-da-da. Let's just say he has some tangential answer. Still the fact, like Zach said, if you shoot 6 out of 8 of your victims are Asian, it's still an Asian hate crime. I mean, the dead people would say it was because he hated Asian people. I mean, well, we may never know in the moment what was in his hearts, but why wouldn't we start off with calling it a hate crime against Asians? And then worst case, it's a really bizarre story that just happened. You know what I mean? Like, why do we always start off when it's a white guy? Oh no, it might have been financial. He was having a bad day, blah, blah, blah. We wouldn't do that for anybody else. And we only did it for the guy in Dallas because he had a manifesto, right? The guy that shut up the Dallas Walmart, he said, I was trying to kill immigrants. So we know that's what he was doing. Because we always forget that one. That was a big one. That day where they shot up that Walmart in Dallas, I mean, we know that was domestic terrorism. He killed a lot of people all at once. So, yeah, it's. I think Zach's got it right. It kind of comes back to what we say sometimes, too, of we've come into an era where we don't listen to the person complaining. The person complaining says, I got beat up by the cops, and half of America says, shut up.
Yep.
You know, we got to reverse that dialogue and be like, well, tell us about it. What happened? Where were you? What cops were they? What did they charge you with? What happened? And then, okay, there's an accusation of police violence, and the police can be cleared. I mean, that's an investigation. It should be investigated as an Asian hate crime, and then cleared if it's not investigated as the worst day of his life. And then I guess if we find a book in his car that's got like "kill all Asians" written in it 1,000 times, we'll consider it a hate crime. It's pretty silly.
You know, another aspect to it is they were able to apprehend him without killing him.
Yep.
Right. That's
Right.
another. With these white shooters, police are always able to find a way to apprehend them without killing them. And I do not believe that white shooters are just substantially different and their behavior is just substantially different where they are calmer, nicer people like some people on the conservative right would like to pretend. That's just not true.
Didn't they take Dylan Roof?
They're approached differently by the police who are arresting them.
Didn't they take Dylan Roof through a Burger King drive-thru or something on the way to jail?
Yep.
Hey,
Don't forget,
And they knew what he did.
he didn't just pull over. They had to use a maneuver to stop him. So he was trying to get away from the cops. It wasn't just that he got pulled over.
I didn't hear that. Can you say a little more about that?
So my understanding is they had to, like, he wasn't stopping, so they had to use like a car maneuver.
The pit maneuver where they hit you at the back wheels. But beyond that, I'm sure Zach heard this part too. They actually got cooperation from his family and got his cell phone information. Like, I don't know, like locate my iPhone or something. I don't know exactly what that means. Something like his cell phone information or something real time, so they're able to track him down. Wow. So they found him in motion due to information the family gave him. So that's very good.
The technology, the good news, I mean, our technology is getting like, I mean, if it was like 10 years ago, this guy, it would take a good couple of days to find. I mean, they found him really quickly. They had a video of him. They had him walking out. They knew who his parents were. They knew where he was driving. They found him quickly enough. What they didn't do is they didn't find him when he went in and bought a gun and got the gun the same day. There was no.
You said that he did buy it legally. Is that what you said?
He bought it legally, but there was no.
And to your point, if you'd made him wait a day, in that day, these same family members that helped him track him down might have heard him say something like, "I have to wait to get my gun" or whatever. Been like, "Why are you getting a gun?" And just getting in the way of, a day is not taking away your right to own a gun.
And why are you getting your first gun? I don't know why we don't talk about this portion as a country. Why isn't there a question on? We have no problem with people getting guns, but when you're getting your first gun in the middle of the day, shouldn't we go first gun just like your first car? There's a period.
There's a class.
There's a light, like there's a little bit of a brief, so you're not going out there and getting a gun in the heat of passion.
Not blaming the gun, blaming the system.
We're not blaming the gun.
Blaming the system. I don't understand why there wasn't if he had waited one day, maybe he would have, like the cop said, not had a bad day. Although that's a crazy thing to say.
Same day that he didn't have a background check, right? That background check wasn't required for that guy.
I don't know about that.
I
don't know what medications he takes or doesn't
get in a day.
It is kind of weird that someone could go in, buy a gun, buy enough bullets, and there's no stop, no pause, no thing. Right. There's so many things that I can say right now that I can't, even if I have the money, I can't just go and buy. And those things don't kill people. It's a little weird.
Zach.
We are blaming the person, Cross.
We're
talking about preventive measures. Yeah. But Cross, if you've ever been in an organization when incidents happen, you don't just say, forklift driver hit that pole, fucking idiot, Fucking idiot forklift driver, you hit the fucking pole. You stop and you sit down and you say, why'd you hit that pole? You drive around that pole every day. How could you possibly hit that pole? Oh, there's a lighting issue. It's not painted yellow like the rest of the poles. You go the root cause analysis and you try and do everything you can to eliminate those type of accidents, because the next time it might not be a pole. It might be me. He might kill me because he couldn't see me. So
you could still fire
gun bullshit talk, right? Stop all this gun bullshit talk. What we're saying is, if he had been delayed 24 hours, maybe a family member could have heard him say, "Hey, I'm waiting on my background check," and maybe somebody could have stepped in, and people could not be dead. That's it. We blame him. We don't blame the
and that forklift driver could have been still fired. You could blame both people.
Absolutely.
And the next forklift driver doesn't do the same thing because you didn't overlook that maybe there should be a small period of time where the person that's in need of a gun cools off.
And when these 8 people are dead, and when these 8 people are dead, on top of this group of people that are dead, on top of these type of people that are dead, on top of this group of people that are dead, we could go through the news story and stack up the AR-15 deaths. And at some point you have to say, maybe a certain gun for some reason is becoming a problem. That's only logical to discuss.
They did a local news thing here in Colorado. It was probably a couple of years ago now, maybe not quite, but it was a bit ago. And they had a dad who, they were like, how fast can you get an AR and 100 rounds after you drop your kid off from school?
Oh, yeah.
And so dad drives his kid to school, drops him off
time and distance
at 8:30 in the morning. The gun shop, he drove to the gun shop. It opened at 9. He had an AR and 100 rounds by 9:50.
Yeah, I'm surprised it took him 50 minutes.
I mean, it was just a time. Yeah, I can get a gun.
I mean, I could be wrong, but AR-15s count as long rifles, right? So it's just like going in and buying a deer rifle.
Yes, it's like buying a 22.
I walked into a Cabela's and walked out with my 270 Winchester, my hunting rifle. Mm-hmm. Now, I think I had to show for some reason, I had to show my hunting. One of the ways to prove your identity, you have to do like 2 forms of ID, and you can use driver's license, passport, hunter safety card, or something else. And so I showed my hunter safety card. But yeah, I think it was just a matter of how much time it took to hand the money over and get the gun.
Yeah, and once again, another aspect of all of this, jumping back to the media, is when something like this happens, you'll hear the media say, he was just 21. He was having a bad day. You know, they'll give all of these, well, let's think about him as a person, right? Who was he? What did he go through?
Right.
It doesn't matter. Maybe if you're doing on the back end analysis, then maybe do that. But when you are reporting a story, I don't care that he was a 21-year-old who had a bad day. He murdered in cold blood 8 people, and it was targeted at Asian Americans. That's what happened.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of, and I don't want to go into a whole new topic, but it reminds me a lot of the sexual assault stories where you'll hear of a woman who accuses, say, her classmates in high school of raping her at a party. And you'll hear people come out and say, well, we don't want this to ruin these men's lives.
Yep, I hear that.
What are you talking about? Like, they've obviously made some sort of fundamental critical mistake in their life. It may ruin their lives. It's time for them to own up for what they've done. You don't protect them as well. You know, they're just a bunch of young men, blah, blah, blah. No, we don't. Yeah, we got it.
We heard the same thing about the seditionists who tried to kill our government.
That's right.
Well, maybe they just got lost, or maybe they misunderstood. And we've studied it 1,000 times. There was no misunderstanding. They were told to go do what they did, and they did.
Or they were unarmed.
They were good little soldiers, and that they were unarmed.
Which is the whole new thing. 9 Republicans voted not to give medals. They can't even agree to give a medal to the person that protects the Capitol because they didn't like that it was called an armed insurrection.
Right.
During an insurrection where people have missing fingers and eyes, and you see people with bear spray and
baseball bats.
That's not armed because they didn't bring guns. So we're going to rewrite history.
Right. Because they were Trump supporters. So obviously the worst thing about Ron Johnson's statement in my mind, there's obviously the inherent racism that he's not scared of. He's scared of BLM people and Antifa people, but not Trump supporters. The sheer irony is he's literally saying, because they're Trump supporters, they're law abiding. Is he trying to say that was law abiding? Because I'm pretty sure that wasn't law abiding.
You are 100% right, Jeff. And there's a lot of latent unsaids. So it's law abiding, it's good people, it's Christian, it's all those things that are not being said. And they're all essentially paint these hegemony supported white males as they're just patriots, man. I want to say this, something, and Zach, just a little piece of history. And I know that you know some history, but I just want to share this with you. This seems, and it smells a lot to me like the first term of Bill Clinton. And what we saw during the first term of Bill Clinton, probably it started about 9 months into his administration, was this crazy discussion about the Michigan militia. And then we saw Ruby Ridge happen. And then it turned into Waco. And then it turned into the Oklahoma City bombing. And Ace, back to what you said, I think it was you that said something about maybe there's a lack of leadership. I think so. Bill Clinton comes into office after 12 years of Republican leadership, Reagan into Bush. And I can remember how mad I was at Iowa State, and I can remember Republican dudes. I've never seen people that mad before. They were so fucking pissed that Bill Clinton won, and they were so sure that he was going to ruin everything for them. And I didn't understand. And I was like, what? These were some very privileged white boys and very successful parents, and they knew what they were doing. But what came along with it was this rat-a-tat, ragtag militia mentality of we're the true patriots. We're going to stay out in the woods. We're going to shoot our guns. We're going to wait our turn, and we're going to get ours if these Democrats step out of line. And I really feel like that's what we're seeing again, only it's 20 years later and it's way worse. I don't know. Jeff, have you and Ace, have you thought about that at all? I mean, you saw Ruby Ridge, you saw that shit go down. It was in the news all the time. And it was like, why are we hearing about this all the time? Well, it was militia versus the USA. And that's what this is. And the same thing goes for these rabid racists who feel like they're doing God's work by picking on people of color and hurting them.
Right. My first big issue was Waco. I had to research Ruby Ridge lately because it didn't get on my radar as a kid.
Okay.
What year was Ruby Ridge? Like 90?
92, 91.
Nice. So I would have
been 93. Yeah.
93. Because then Waco definitely happened while I was in college. So like I was a junior in high school. Like I don't think Ruby Ridge, I don't remember it at real time. I don't.
The crazy thing about Ruby Ridge was that it just lasted. The FBI was out in the woods. Dude, I don't remember his name. He was up in his cabin and he never came out, and he just sat there for a month. And that was the first one.
Yeah, there was two major encounters. If I'm not mistaken, they were trying to move up on the cabin and got surprised by part of the group. And I think shots were exchanged by the people at the officers and maybe even killed one or shot one. But they got away that time, or no, maybe his boy got killed there.
His boy and wife got shot.
Well, his wife ended up getting shot because a sniper took a shot as a guy went through the door and hit his wife by accident.
Yep.
Is a pretty much uniform story. I think even the guy said it that way.
But in the right wing and Rush Limbaugh circles for years.
But they wanted
the federal government was the bad guy.
Well, they wanted the guy, and they got him too, Randy Weaver. They wanted the guy, and they infiltrated a white supremacist group and got him to make him a sawed-off shotgun.
Yep.
And that's how they got the warrant. So it was one of these things where you have a lunatic at the edge of town doing crazy stuff, and then they entrapped him with the sawed-off shotgun. So that got people pissed because like the whole thing started with this sawed-off shotgun. And yeah, I mean, I'd hate to go round and round on this all day.
Well, there's the details of the case, but there's the national smell of anti-FBI.
Yeah, it was
that this
really
poor guy in the woods was the true patriot.
Yeah.
And then it was, man, maybe these guys in Waco weren't that bad. Maybe they weren't some crazy David Koresh Davidian cult. Maybe they were picked on by the FBI.
I sure wish Waco, that guy, David Koresh went jogging every single morning. Why didn't they just grab him while he was jogging before? First thing they should have done was just surveil him for a minute and then pick him up while he was jogging. Would have been over in a day.
So I don't know. I feel a lot like this is that 2.0 because mixed in with a much higher pitch of overt racism.
Yeah. Yeah.
And definitely. I don't think the two are separated. I don't think these Asian American beatings and killings are any different than the than the Trump because of the words he used about the virus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
The way he called the virus Kung Flu and the China virus was absolutely deplorable, like everything else he does. And it was so we wouldn't call it the Trump virus. And
Right.
That's all he wanted was us not to call it the Trump virus, and it worked. He deflected focus. He said something horrible, just like I always say. He was chewing gum in class. He went to tell him to stop, and he shit his pants. And so we were still talking about shitting his pants. We never got back to the chewing gum, and we didn't call it the Trump virus, even though he killed 500,000 people.
You know, if anyone is trying to pretend like this wasn't because of Trump, the rise in Asian hate crimes, of course, there's always been Asian hate crimes. It's not like this is new. There's been discrimination going on since the very beginning of when Asians have come to this country. But if we're going recently, the 120% increase, the over 3,800 reported acts of anti-Asian verbal and physical attacks.
3,800?
Yeah, that's just the stuff that's been reported, right? There's all this stuff that obviously is going to go unreported. So you have at least 3,800 over the past year. That is a 120% increase from the year prior. And what happened in the past year? Donald Trump went on to his supporters and started preaching about the China virus and the Kung Flu and how he was demonizing people of Asian descent. And
everybody on the Trump side needs to help protect his incredible failures. That's part of the teamwork. Is this guy was such an inept president, so bad at everything he did. Such an incredible fucking failure at life and relationships and leadership. And yet what these poor sad sacks have done, because they don't have a platform, because Ronna McDaniel and the other clowns in the Republican Party let him run roughshod over their party. They went into a presidential election without a platform. And here we are. This is literally part of that not having a platform, because the only thing you go back to then, Zach, is bad habits and behaviors that then protect the Don, the boss. And so 3,800 reported abuse, whether it's verbal or physical. And we know the correlation is that this virus just would have landed a year ago. So in 1 year, he was able to cause that much consternation and violence.
And if you look at the statistics on how it breaks down, these people are attacking women and the elderly. That's who's mainly being attacked.
Yep, because they're weak people. They're scared
Right.
shitless to go after some dude who's going to kick the shit out of them. And so they pick on people who can't defend themselves. That's a typical white supremacist move.
I mean, I don't know if you saw in the news, but there was an old lady that got he hit her in the face, and apparently she beat the hell out.
She had some sort of stick with her or something.
Yeah.
She beat the shit out of discount Ed Sheeran.
Yeah, completely beat the hell out of him. They were like, she broke his arm. He was on a stretcher.
Ed Sheeran's granddad.
So even that doesn't work. But yeah, of course they go after the weak. It's much easier than going after. Why would you?
Cross King, are you concerned about the fact that I call it the Trump virus? Because total deaths worldwide, USA 552,000. Brazil is at number 2 with 287,000. By the way, another COVID denier. Mexico 196,000 deaths. India 159,000 deaths, and we all know India has what? 4 billion people itself. UK 125,000 deaths. Italy, remember how bad Italy was? 104,000 deaths, less than a quarter of our deaths. So it's the Trump virus. So I appreciate your feedback. It's the Trump virus.
And boy, at this point, it's the Republican virus.
I really hate if someone focused hatred towards Trump for the fact that he killed 500,000 Americans. That would really break my heart if people started protesting Mar-a-Lago and making him answer for it.
But they won't.
This is the problem. This is my when you can't, his administration is over, and when you can't go pull back and go, let me take a chat, let me look at the whole thing and see what happened, just like with a CEO, and you go, well, that didn't really work out. I mean, more people died here than any other country. We used more money to fix the country, which we didn't use. We've thrown more money into the problem than any country put together. Somehow, all of European Union, all of Europe, they're only just now hitting like $1 billion. We're like 6.
And a lot of their people have had $20,000 of income from their governments too. So it's not like they've been cheap.
Yeah. So somehow, and then on top of that, it's even more annoying when somehow people just give Trump the benefit that somehow he found the vaccine. What did he exactly do for the vaccine? He used our money. He threw the money and gave a whole bunch of companies unlimited amount of money to find a vaccine using our money. He didn't find it, and Pfizer wasn't even in the program. And on top of that, they didn't even put the appropriate amount of orders to even cover all Americans. So he even messed that up. There was no distribution plan. And the fact is, we could have been months and months and months ahead of this if he had used the Defense Production Act and told Merck, which is what Biden did, hey, you're making the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because Johnson & Johnson beat you out. You're making the vaccine.
He could have been pro-mask. He could have been
pro-mask.
He could have been pro-shutdowns. He was anti all of those things.
He was anti everything that slowed the virus down.
He didn't even want to react initially because it was affecting only blue states.
Zach, you got cut off a couple times there.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, I'm enjoying listening to what they're saying.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just moderating.
I quoted Trump as one day it may just go away, and Cross King's answer is it might. No one knows. Well, we're 500,000 dead people later, Cross, so I don't think that plan's really working.
I think that you've lost.
That shows your ignorance.
The lack of self-analysis or the lack of willingness to do self-analysis, you know.
Cross King, that shows you're just willfully ignorant. I think I'll stop discussing with you for the night.
Yeah.
There's a comment by Tang it's pretty far back now, but saying how it's not just white people who are doing some of these hate crimes against Asian Americans. That's true. We need to call it out wherever it is, right? I think every community needs to be conscious of whatever racial biases it has, whatever its community is doing. With that being said, you need to be very careful and not try to pit communities against each other, because that is not helpful in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
You know, you saw the right consistently tries to pit Asian Americans and other Black Americans and Mexican Americans, Latino Americans. The right continuously tries to pit them against each other. Mm-hmm. We cannot play into that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I agree.
So I just wanted to put that out.
That's a powerful thing. I was thinking about too that the only more powerful. What am I trying to say? The most powerful thing is not racism for these people. It's the motivator of their white fragility. It's their fear. And if you haven't read the book White Fragility, it just talks about how uncomfortable, when people get uncomfortable, white people especially get uncomfortable talking about race. Period. It's because we have advantage. And we don't want to lose that advantage. I listened to Davcat the other night. She dropped that idea of white advantage in replacement of white privilege. And I like white privilege too. I think it's an important word. But the idea of white advantage, not every person who's white feels like they have privilege. A lot of them are middle class or lower class and feel like they're getting screwed. And so Trump allowed them to engage that racist stuff to protect or to feel like they were protecting their heritage, or again, make America great again, so that white people had a chance. This white fragility thing it also is economic. It comes from the fact that so many people are living paycheck to paycheck and scared shitless that they're going to lose their house or they're going to lose what they've got. And so it's really easy, Zach, when they start playing that game of pitting this one against that one, it's set up for that. And so part of what really scares these Republicans is a solid economy. And Trump's economy, I mean, Trump inherited the Obama economy and wrote it, claimed it was his. But Trump left the worst economy since Herbert Hoover after in his wake. Like we got depression level economy, and there's nobody on the Republican side who is capable or willing to be like, we got to rethink some things. We got to double down on this. We got to change this. They're not talking about anything other than how bad Democrats are and how, again, then they just go into these racist tropes and start playing these games, and they get everybody animated, and then they take our eye off the ball. They are so scared about this stimulus package that's going to affect a lot of their constituents in a positive way. They are scared to death.
Yeah.
That in about 6 months, a lot of lower class white people are going to go, I'm doing better than I was under Trump. That's a very frightening thing.
And it was something Trump used as a sales tool for a long time. I'm doing better than I was under Obama. Well, that's because the economy continued to improve. But when Trump completely wrecked it by ignoring a virus, well, now if Biden gets it fixed again, they're going to have to acknowledge, yeah, I mean, I'm back better than I was at the peak of Trump's economy. Because again, we all know the average person isn't really leveraged on the stock market. You know, most of us, if we're lucky, we have some 401k tied in it. We're not day trading, making billions of dollars. Yeah, I was thinking yesterday too. We were talking about, you hear a lot of post-racial talk from the Republican side of the fence, and I think they're just woefully ignorant of what they're even trying to say. What I was thinking about as we were getting ready to get on this call, there's all these different factors, right? Like a Republican would say they fear and dislike the undereducated. They fear and dislike the criminals, which of course for them, by the way, a criminal is anyone who's committed a crime. They don't require conviction. Well, I guess except for spouse abusers, and then you need conviction plus a letter from their mom or something. But anyway, we can get back to that. A crime, crossing the border, you're a criminal. You don't need a trial. They just know you're a criminal. Anyway, they don't like criminals. They don't generally like low income people because they've always had to sell the idea that those people are low income because they deserve to be low income, because otherwise how do they sleep at night? We can go through the whole list, and I guess they'd get through this whole list, and we'd all sit here with our socially aware selves, and at the end of the list go, it's funny because that seems to separate white culture from all these other cultures. We all know, what the urban core is, and we know what types of people live in the urban core. So it's really just code to say, well, I don't like what's going on in the urban core. Well, the urban core is created by the system surrounding the urban core. People have higher conviction rate. Guess where I see almost all the cops I ever see in my day? I'm in a very transitional type of. It's an older, nice neighborhood, and there's older white flight neighborhoods around me. So I've got urban core kind of butting right up against me, and I see all the cops when I'm in those lower income areas. The cops that come through my neighborhood are driving through. They're going to some other call. They're going back to the cop shop. If I go 3 blocks, if I go 2 miles north of me, I bet I can't count to 20 without seeing a cop car. I mean, there's cop cars everywhere. So guess what happens? You have a lot more crime and arrests and convictions. Well, that's because where all the cops are. That's their job, is to drive around and observe crime.
Yep.
So it's all this cycle. So they'll do something like say, well,
it's like more testing. You get more.
Yeah, it's endemic. It's endemic in this inner city culture to be criminals. And I don't like criminals. I don't care that they happen to be a XYZ race. It's just inner city people are criminals, and I don't support criminals. It's just they're putting one little minor obstacle, and then they can sit back in their country clubs and be like, I'm not racist. I'm not racist. Well, you're fine with a bunch of black men going to jail for weed possession. I mean, that's pretty racist. Just because they broke a small crime, and we all know the cocaine crimes didn't line up with the pot crimes. So there's all these things that were used to target black people and put them in jail. And then, I don't like broken families. Well, you put all the men in jail, or they, fought each other over illicit drug sales. I mean, what do you?
Speaking of which, I think it's time to move into politics. We've got about a half an hour left tonight,
okay.
And I'm gonna switch gears, and then I'm gonna let you guys go because I know Ace, you've got some things you want to say too.
Put people in a hole and then spit on them. By the way, that's what they're doing. They put people in a hole and then they're spitting on them, and then they're pretending like they don't care. Well, I don't know that I didn't know there were other racial groups down there. I just don't like all those people in the hole. Well, you kicked them in there. You sorted them out by race, put them in this hole, and now you're spitting on them.
Well, real quick, Marty, if I could say one last thing on this. I think what Joe Biden needs to do is address the nation in a way that Trump never would during the summer. Joe Biden needs to go out there, have a full address, and really be the leader that this country needs right now.
But at the same time, you do agree that before he does that, there has to be a full investigation. We got to make sure that
Yes.
we see the optics, and
I'm
it's obvious what it is. But before the president of the United States goes out there, we want to make sure that for some reason this wasn't a weird case where this guy literally knew all these, say, six people, and the other people were with. You still have to have an investigation. To us, it's obvious what happened, but I do need an investigation before he talks.
It's not just about this one thing, though. It's about what's been happening all year. That's what I want Joe Biden to really, that's why I really want Joe Biden to come out. And he can use this as kind of the opportunity to springboard and really talk about the rise in Asian hate crimes and be a true leader.
Yeah.
I'm assuming he will. He's about to have this press conference that the riot is all of a sudden concerned about the president not answering questions, although he has a press secretary and she does it on a daily basis, something that Trump didn't even have towards the end.
I don't even know how to find that. What was that? It's like the third year of his presidency. He went under Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Didn't he go like 7-8 months without a single?
No, not even the press secretary.
Oh yeah, they were in hiding that whole time.
Oh, it was like 8 months, I think.
So yeah,
We were all like, is Sarah Huckabee Sanders even still his press secretary? Because she just disappeared.
Right.
We got an
anti-vaxxer.
Vaxxer. That's amazing.
Of course he is, and of course he's worried about gas prices going
Ride that out.
$3.
Ride that out, Cross King. This
is to Cross King and all those who might be similar anti-vaxxer types. One of the things that we've learned in this country, and we're seeing now with this, and I'm switching to politics now. First piece is immigration. We've got whatever it is, 4,300 children at the border who we're trying to figure out what to do with them and process them correctly and all of this. And one of the things that's going to come in from the right is this fear of immigrants. But I just want to appease, especially Cross King, for those of you out there who think like him, who are very much afraid of immigrants. Luckily, we have room for them because President Trump in his leadership allowed 500,000 Americans to be dead. So we have room for 4,300 children to come into this country. And I didn't hear a Republican raise an eyebrow over the 100, 200, 300, 400, 500,000 dead. The economics of that is unbelievable. How many millions of dollars in the actuarial tables were each one of those deaths worth? Never heard that reported. Never took seriously the amount of collateral damage from all those Americans that are dead, some of them in the middle of their earning years for their family, never to be replaced. So, Cross King, your house, baby.
Your house.
And thanks. Your house is my house. We're one big country.
We're all in the same house.
Zero-sum game answer. The ultimate zero-sum game answer. Cross King, you're lost, brother.
And Cross King, I always do. It is a little bit funny when Republicans always complain about they go with gas prices. You do understand that the government doesn't set the gas prices. The people that you're upset about are the gas companies that Republicans support.
They don't understand that.
I don't understand. You're upset at your own people because the Republicans protect the gas companies. Now the gas companies are the oil companies are upping gas prices because now people want to get out.
Mm-hmm.
How many refineries are down?
Protect them. They're the ones upping the cost, not Joe Biden. Like, why do you not understand that concept?
I've asked this every time someone says this too. How long were how many refineries down when Texas froze?
Ace, what you're forgetting is Joe Biden is the most effective president in the history of all presidents and has passed the entire left-wing agenda in 1 month.
And then they'll tell you the Keystone Pipeline, which has nothing to do with gas prices.
Yeah, the pipeline that never transported oil.
It never functioned. They never finished.
I gotta stop the presses.
Yeah.
Because Zach just said something incredibly profound. And I know that he is a progressive to the core. And so I want to pull back. I'm a Joe Biden supporter, and you're a Bernie supporter, my brother. So talk to me about where we are in that really quick from the left. Are you happy with Joe at this point? Are you waiting for more? I mean, I know that we're waiting for more, but it's been a pretty big move, don't you think?
I think what he did with the what's the official name of the bill? The COVID relief bill? Ace, I feel like you would know this.
American
American,
American Heal Plan.
the American Rescue Plan.
Rescue's in there for sure.
The American Heals Plan.
Yeah,
It's a the
American
American.
Heals Plan we decided last week.
American
Yeah.
Rescue Plan. Yeah.
It's American Rescue.
I think it is probably one of the most important pieces of legislation that has come out in a long time because it shows the government can help.
Mhm.
With that being said, it is a fantastic, amazing Band-Aid. We got to remember, a lot of this stuff expires in a year.
Yep.
This isn't necessarily a criticism on Joe Biden, but we got to remember that and keep that in our heads, that a lot of these amazing, amazing programs don't last forever. They pretty much all expire within a year. So I guess that I'm feeling pretty good about it. There, obviously, the $15 minimum wage, I am disappointed, annoyed with. I'm really pissed at some of the. I'm happy that it was able to get onto a vote, because now I know where some of our Democratic senators stand.
Yeah.
And I want the $15 minimum wage passed, and I think at this point it's kill the filibuster or kill Joe Biden's agenda.
Yep.
That's the way I'm looking at it.
Yep.
And I think Ace, you had a take on it where you make the filibuster the 2022. That's what 2022 is about, right? Making sure.
Don't do that. You have to do completely get rid of the filibuster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At one point we were talking about that, and I think you made that a priority for that.
Basically, my thought is you have to you have to at least put it back to where they have to talk, which you can get done now. I'm just being realistic. I know 1,000% you will not get rid of it right now. There's zero chance you can do it. You need more senators, and I think you can run on that.
Yeah.
Specifically, I think you will run on $15 an hour, and the way you run on $15 an hour by also running, the only way we're going to get rid of this thing is we need to get rid of the filibuster, which means we need your senators not to be Republicans. That's, I think, what they're going to do, because they need to run on something in 2 years, and I think the $15 an hour thing would be perfect. But I think right now the only thing you're going to be able to do is go back to the original rule. So
the $15, with knowing who and who isn't, I think there were 8 Democrats who voted against the $15 an hour. So Ace, you're right in that it's probably not going to get passed in the next 2 years. With the filibuster, I don't think it's right to make that about the 2022 election, because we're going to lose Georgia, we're going to lose Arizona, we're going to lose every state that has a Republican state legislator if we do not pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act.
I agree with that.
If that doesn't get passed, the Republicans are going to double down on Trump, and they know they can't win the popular vote, so they're going to control who can vote. So that's why we need to get rid of the filibuster,
I have a question
or at least
for you,
do something.
I think you'll have an answer for this, and I'm really worried about this. I said this the last show. This should not, I repeat, this should not be the next thing that they work on. I think, because I don't know the rule, but what happens if they put it into the Senate and it does not pass? It gets filibustered. Is it done pretty much, or can they bring it back again?
I think you can just vote on a new bill.
You probably won't, right? If they don't get through it, and it doesn't.
If they go to war and don't win, then it probably doesn't come back.
That's why it's a bad idea to do it right now, because the opposition is ready to fight that war. You have to give them a toss-up. You have to give them a curveball and go, we won't do that bill right now. Let's do infrastructure. You have to show Joe Manchin that the Republicans are not going to be on board with anything. You have to try to convince Joe Manchin and Sinema that you got to get rid of the filibuster, because the Republicans won't even work with you on things that they agree on. Why do you think they're going to vote for you on this John Lewis Act if they bring it on to the floor first? It is a terrible plan, because it's not going to pass. You're not getting rid of the filibuster, and then you've lost in 2 years, because unless you bring it back, which is much harder to do.
Or you go to reconciliation.
You can't reconciliate that vote. because
So-
it's not a budgetary.
So reconciliation,
Some sort of budget.
It
right?
has to be some-
Zach.
Right. And I guess Ace, to answer you, if well, I'll kind of respond with a question back to you. Do you agree that the John Lewis Voting Rights Act needs to be a battle that is fought before the midterms? Do you agree that
I
it has to be fought?
100% agree to that. To add to that, I think that's a war that you cannot afford to lose, and I do not
I
think
agree.
you're prepared to fight that war right now. You have to do something to the filibuster. At the very least, bring it to where they have to talk, and then you can bring in some political rules in there and basically shift it in. Basically, do what the Republicans did with the Supreme Court. They didn't get rid of the filibuster; they just got rid of a portion of it. Democrats have to go with Joe Manchin and push him so he doesn't get rid of the filibuster. But in turns, they get that they have to win that legislation. If they lose, it's over, and there's
over.
zero chance they can pass it right now. Zero, because if you listen to the Republicans, they are already telling you they're willing to die for this. They're not budging. They're not going to do any of it.
If it passes, it's the end of the Republican Party.
That is probably true.
Yeah.
Ron
Even though they're probably
Johnsons of the
already-
world,
Yep.
and the Lindsey Grahams, and these really.
Well, they've made their bed in going crazy. They're the only. I mean, you see all of these Republican senators who were somewhat moderate or not complete crazy people who are stepping out. There's 7 of them who are not going to run again in the next election, and they're all going to be replaced by Trump nuts. You know that because that's all the Republican Party is anymore. They don't have an agenda. They're just crazed. I want to give time for this because Ace, you were prepared tonight, and I want to give you the floor for a minute. Let's talk international politics for a second. Is this something I
Yeah.
should put up? Do you have something ready for me?
I'll put this up. I'll translate it for you.
Is this the add to stream I've got right now?
I want to make a note too, because sometime maybe I can talk to Zach on the side. I'd really like to know how you redistrict without just being in the same argument again. Like, what's the automated redistricting model? But I'm sure Zach and I can talk about that on the side.
When
That's
you
probably
get rid of gerrymandering.
right.
Well, I
but
mean,
that's
plenty of
easy
states
to
already
say.
do it.
There's plenty of ways to say it, but I mean, my point is, you still have to draw the line somewhere. You just
Well,
start at the east edge of your state and just go west until you hit the number of people, and then do it again and again. Just make every state a stripe, or a stripe this way, or I mean, there's always going to be a city somewhere on one of those lines. And do you include the city or you don't include the city? That's a whole nother topic. Well, Zach and I can have a sidebar on that.
I mean, real quick, Jeff, I would say California does it where it's nonpartisan, where they have a separate group, and I would just suggest to you, look at California's districts, and if any of them look like a duck, then you can say that they're wrong.
Fair enough.
All right, Ace, switching gears.
So today and pretty much this week, we've been hit by reality while we're all infighting with each other. The world and these powers and this battle that we've been fighting keeps on moving, and we have really put ourselves in some tough positions. One is Putin, one is China. This is Putin's response to Joe Biden calling him a killer, and I'll play it, and then I can translate to you what he really says.
Мы действительно, как он сказал, мы с ним лично знакомы.
Like you said, we know
И
each
что бы я
other.
ему ответил? Я бы сказал ему,
And what would my answer
будьте
be?
здоровы.
I would tell him,
Я желаю
I wish
ему
you good health.
здоровья. Говорю это без иронии, без шуток.
I'm saying it without
Руководство
irony or
Соединенных
jokes.
в целом настроено,
The U.S.
Имеет с
leadership
нами
in general
определенные
aims to have
отношения.
certain relations with us,
но по
but only
тем
in
вопросам,
questions which are of
которые
interest for the U.S.
представляют интерес для самих Соединенных Штатов
and on their
И,
conditions.
на их условиях.
We, though, they
Мы-
think we are like
Они
them.
думают, что мы такие же, как они, но мы другие люди. У нас другой
we are
генетический и культурно-нравственный код. Но
We have
мы
different genetic,
умеем
cultural, and moral
отстаивать
code.
свои собственные интересы. И мы будем с ними работать.
We can pursue our own
В тех
interests,
областях,
and we will be
в
working with
которых
the
мы сами
U.S.
заинтересованы. И на тех условиях, которые мы
in the
считаем
areas that are
выгодными для
interesting
себя.
for us, and on the
Им
conditions
придется
profitable
с этим
for us.
считаться. Им придется с этим считаться, несмотря
They will
на
have to reckon with it.
все попытки
They'll have
остановить
to
наше
reckon with it
развитие.
despite all the attempts to prevent our
Несмотря
development,
на санкции,
despite the
оскорбления,
sanctions and
им
insults.
придется с этим считаться.
You're
Well,
muted.
that sounded like Russia first with a little bit of racism thrown in. You're still muted.
Ace, you're muted.
So if you think that that's not a threat of all threats,
Yeah.
that is he's literally threatening, and he's telling you what he's going to do without telling you what's going to happen. And basically he's saying that he doesn't like the conditions and he wants it on his terms, not the US terms. And there will be a day that he will basically hold the terms in his hands. And then, I understand Russian and I understand kind of Russian mannerisms, but the whole I wish him health, that is a threat. This is also a documented threat. So Putin, he likes to poison people. That's his thing. He specifically likes to poison people with chemicals that can only be found in Russia. So everyone knows it's him to make a point. So he killed I think it's his daughter's someone. I forgot the guy, but he tried to poison him, and the guy survived. Apparently, even with chemical weapons, sometimes these things fail. I don't know. But the guy survived, and there's a documented the day before, Putin wished him good health. Just like that. So this is a thing of like, I wish you like good health. I also think he also is pushing on that conspiracy theory where it works both ways. I think it's a threat. It also kind of pushes that whole conspiracy theory that Joe Biden's lost his mind, which another thing that almost got covered, our intelligence just came out and said that the Russians have been cooking up this whole thing, this whole pushing the Joe Biden's dementia and the whole Joe Biden thing. This has all been their ploy. And the reason that we know it's true, and this is where it's a little funny, is we saw it happen in front of us all the time. We saw Rudy Giuliani. There's a video of him with talking to a Russian agent that was named in the report that is a connection with Putin. We saw it. You can go on YouTube and find the video where he's talking to Rudy Giuliani. He's giving them information. They're talking about it. Then Rudy Giuliani repeats that information over and over and over. We see it happening, and then people still can go back and say, I don't think it's true. How is it possible? We see it happening. So this is the issue. That the good news is we don't really need Russia for anything. So the bad news is, because we've been super weak and just turning a blind eye, we don't really know what they can all do with the hack that the God of all God hacks that they just did. And we don't know what they can actually do. So the good news, we don't need them. The bad news is they might have quite a bit of leverage on us until we can figure out what all can they do with this hack. Can they shut down our power grid? And I've read this on the show that the FBI has released a memo that just Iran has the ability of shutting down a whole city's power grid for a minimum on the smallest scale, a couple of weeks. Like, if you think about it, like if Georgia's power grid just goes down for a couple of weeks, it's nuts.
Yep.
This is just them, not talking about that what Russia can do. So I hope that that's not the threat that's coming in, but it's a problem, and I don't think you can fight this problem by yourself anymore, because the only way you can fight this problem is you got to start not attacking. You got to start making friends in the European Union, people that you haven't been friends with, like the Germans that buy gas from Russia and cut that off. the sanctions don't help anymore. You got to go after Russian friends that he's working with and start cutting off assets there, so you can start so that he can start going, okay, it's a problem now.
There are reports too that the sanctions are absolutely taking effect, and that Putin is losing his billionaires. He's losing his oligarchs. That they're getting pissed off, and that there's a lot of discord happening in Russia right now, where even a couple of years ago he had everybody kind of tied up, and which is, I think, is interesting as well. That Putin, while he was married to Trump or sponsored Trump, those two are in such cahoots that some in the State Department knew where to hit with some of these new sanctions. I think that's also really interesting to know that if he's starting to lose the billionaire class in his world,
the oligarchs.
That's when things start to fall apart, especially in Russia. Those oligarchs like to work together in some sort of fashion, and everybody's getting rich together,
And the whole point of them is to be able to keep their money.
Yep.
So if we start shutting down the oligarchs' money, then they're not happy with him because they don't get to keep their money.
Ace, I'm seeing a potential to maybe kill two birds with one stone, maybe three birds with one stone. Maybe let's make a deal with Germany where we start selling them green energy products manufactured in America. I mean, just a thought.
Do that. The problem is we don't do that as a country.
Right.
We could do that, but we don't do that as a country. And I've talked about this before. The fact that the last guy that's all anti-China and China rips us off and they steal our intelligent property had his blinders closed and let Tesla take away the one of the best technologies that we have to offer for the next generation, batteries, and allow them to take their battery and start manufacturing in China is the biggest loss the United States will ever feel, because that could have been our into the next future. Mm-hmm. We could have brought in the best battery in the world, because there isn't, and this is not me just, I'm America. Tesla makes the best batteries and no one is even close. There's not a competitor. It's a done deal. That's why people like Tesla as a stock, because they do have something, and it's batteries. And we allowed now China to make those batteries. So guess what's going to happen in 2 years? There's going to be Chinese batteries that are going to be much cheaper, and they're going to be sold to Germany. We've lost that war. That's why we need the Green New Deal, which I don't like. I don't like the name. I don't like the idea of the Green New Deal for other reasons.
Speaking about China, let's talk about their push, because they're also flexing.
Yeah. So China is definitely also flexing, and this one is a little bit more. This is the China thing is a lot more worrisome, because unlike Russia, we actually need China a lot. It's obvious. So because they make everything, because this is what happens.
We don't.
Because when we don't. So when that happens, this statement happens. If you could read.
Hold on, let me grab it real quick. Here we go.
So they had a summit, and this is what they said.
The Xi delegation tells Biden delegation they don't have the qualification to say they speak to China from a position of strength. This is what we were worried about, right?
That's what you're worried about. When China goes, wait a minute, you're going to come to the table and talk to us? You owe us trillions of dollars. Trillions. Now, either you start paying up or we don't start exporting. We have the position. And by the way, you've been adding taxes to us and tariffs us, and now we want a bigger payment. This is why you don't give this much power to China. And one of the biggest problems with the tariff that the Republicans will never talk about is what you did with the tariff is you kicked China in the shins, and they were down for a bit because you cut off things they needed. But while you tariffed them, they went down, and they went, okay, and they found other distributors. They went to Russia, and they buy corn and soy in Russia now. They buy corn and soy from Canada. They found other places to buy the things they need, and now they don't really need us that much. So when we're back, they go, yeah, we'll buy some corn, and we'll buy some soy, and we'll buy cattle, but we don't need as much because we're buying it from these other places.
We got other suppliers now.
So now they need us less. Now we still have an economy that is our only, which is why Joe Biden is really smart with this economics. This economy has if it stumbles a lot, it's going to stumble really hard. And the problem is adversaries like China will hit hard. This economy needs to pop into gear, and we need to start buying a whole bunch of stuff that's made in China. So that whole thing keeps on going, at which point China goes, we need the US. They're our biggest customer. We can't lose them. But if we stop buying stuff, it's a problem worldwide. We control the world economy because there's so much traffic and money going backwards and forwards and goods and everything like that. So it is a huge problem, and there is no good solution to any of it. That's the problem.
So you don't think the good solution would be to build a bunch of destroyers and head them over towards? No.
I mean, you can't beat their. I mean, they have 1 billion people.
I know.
Standing army. Like they're huge. Like, why would you even want to? And they make all. I mean, the problem is the reason that I say there is no good solution is because we've allowed them to get too big, and there are certain things that we can't stop them from doing. And I know there's going to be a huge portion of the Democratic Party, as they are right to do. They're going to go, how can we deal with China with what they're doing in these other countries and in their own country? But the problem is there's nothing you can do about it at this point. They're too big. That's the problem. You have to slowly pull back. So what they're doing in the camps, it's terrible. We should do something. But we don't have the power to go, if you don't stop that, we're not buying anything. You have to get the entire NATO involved in this. And we haven't really been the nicest NATO member in the last 4 years. And they're not really happy with us because we randomly pulled out troops from a NATO area without telling them. And we
did everything. We defunded them. We berated them. I mean, meaning our former dipshit president, did all of this by himself. He destroyed so many relationships.
And NATO is more important to us than anything, because what NATO does is, don't forget, China and Russia, unlike for us, they're all neighbors.
Right.
So Europe needs to stand up to China and Russia a lot more than we do, because there's a seas overseas. It's still really hard for them to just fly into here. It's a lot easier to just roll in an army. So, I mean, theoretically, if you just start rolling in tanks, it's much easier to go without going through seas.
Yeah.
So China and Russia, the Europeans are also worried about that. That's why NATO is so important, because NATO has rules that says if you attack one, you attack us all. And even China won't deal with a NATO, and Russia won't deal with a NATO. It's too many countries. But when you start breaking it apart, you also allow these other countries that are smaller, they start going to the adversaries. They go, well, we can't defend ourselves. Now we're part of Russia, or we're part of China. They'll protect us.
They pick the local bully and just stay under their wing.
That's why Russia doesn't want Ukraine in NATO. Easy.
Exactly.
Ukraine was in NATO, and Russia rolled in a tank into Crimea and took it. Now there's a war, and they would never do it.
Jeff.
I was going to say earlier today, Shucks, we all know Shucks was lamenting about how Biden's jacking everything up with China. So I started digging in, finding sources. The same guy who's laying out all these heavy-handed rules or things he's saying, his name's Yang Jiechi is what I found. And he said February 1st that America needs to change its misguided approach founded under Trump that brought the diplomatic relationship to its lowest point since it was established. So I just want to be clear that, like, yes, there are quotes like China, for example, Cross King actually brings up a good point, Taiwan. They obviously don't want us supporting Taiwan's independence,
right?
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But just because they're drawing lines and saying, we'll handle Taiwan and don't worry about X and don't worry about Y, I think it's I don't think the dialogue is true that we're like in a worse position with. I don't think Biden's made things worse. I think Biden's just the next leader. Trump eroded our position. It'll take a while to turn it around, but I think it's a mistake. A lot of these tweets, I think, are just like the not having a press conference. We're getting this sort of, hey, China's making loud noises. Biden's failing, just like when Obama had an aircraft carrier strafed by a MiG or something. And they're like, flew right over an aircraft carrier. Well, he doesn't respect him. Of course, under Trump, they did the same thing. Yeah. But point being, I think there's this sort of saber rattling is part of diplomacy always. So I just caution that just because China said a couple strong things, I don't think we're like screwed. I don't think they're ready to cut us off. I mean, I think it's just sort of your normal stuff.
Yeah. And they did come back and say they want to be. I think the issue is Trump took away a lot of our tools that we can use as a way to go. If you guys do this, we do this, which was always the tariffs and other tools. He took them away because he used them all up. Now we can't say we're going to tariff you more. We can't say we're going to sanction you when we owe them a ton of money. They do have a lot more power. And we've seen that when they use their power, they don't come back. Look at what they did to the NBA. They struck down with a hammer on the NBA for a small little thing, just a tweet. And they just went, you're done. $1 billion contract, gone. And they didn't come back to it either. So they do have strength inside of the U.S. that we've kind of allowed them to buy up Disney, buy up these bigger companies,
and they don't have to take polls. The advantage of a communist country, they don't have to make their people happy.
They just do things.
They just do things and block it on the internet. They just make their own decisions.
Yeah,
it is a very hard problem, but unfortunately, it's just like the immigration thing. We can't get caught up with some of these things. There is no perfect solution. There's no perfect solution. And when one thing gets done and then our side just goes, well, what about this? And this is not perfect. And Joe Biden is doing this. You're arguing on something that has no perfect solution. There's not enough beds for children. They weren't built. They keep on coming. So either you tell the children, hey, we're stopping you right at the border and you have to stay in Mexico, which was Trump's policy, or you tell them you don't have to stay in Mexico, you come here, but we're not ready for them. There's no perfect solution for this. You have to find a good medium, but it's a messy job. And we cannot forget that when we're bashing our side, because we're helping the right, because they're bashing 100%, and then we're adding in and going, oh, look at that, they're right. I mean, we need to be a little bit more kind of Trumpy about that and pump up our people, because we need to win elections in 2 years.
Well, and we need to set agenda, and I think we're still in the first 100 days of Joe Biden's administration. That's another element of this.
100 million shots.
We're still doing 100 million shots, which is tomorrow, which is so exciting. We're still doing the initial layout. Biden has yet to lay out the Biden doctrine in terms of immigration or China. And I believe that the Biden doctrine will be coming in both of those encounters. And I think that Biden and his team are going to lay out different parameters and different goals with China than we've seen, than Obama could even do. And I think that's going to happen. And I think that'll give them a chance to work together. That's my prediction on that. And then the other prediction is that I believe that Joe Biden will lay out a full doctrine of, I don't know how I want to say this, the immigration issue, but also Central America or the entire North American continent. In redoing NAFTA, one of the things Trump didn't do was revisit some of the reasons for NAFTA in the original document. One of the reasons that they were working towards that is to create a large trade zone where Mexico, Canada, and the United States were able to have partnerships, and companies were certainly able to go down and exploit, low-income wages and all of that to go make cars in Mexico and all of that. But it was going to be part of a larger structure to include prosperity into Central America. It's bad down there, man. It is run by gangs and it is run by crazy violence. And these children are running for their lives, and they're running to the only place they can get to by foot. And so I think Joe will, reinstitute the I don't know, Lady Liberty policy for anything else. I don't know a better way to describe it, but give me your tired and your poor and your huddled masses yearning to break free. Send their asses here. We need them, we want them, and we'll make room for them. Do you know why I know we have room for them? Because we have 660 billionaires in this country. And if there's anything that is an abomination to nature and creation itself, is a billionaire. Billionaires are unnatural. They don't happen without bullying and policies that support them. And yet what we've done is since Ronald Reagan, we've created a culture where we house these billionaires. We allow them to make major decisions, pay zero taxes, basically. And that's been our policy. Joe is going to address some of these things. I'm not saying he's going to have a miracle cure. We got 660 billionaires in this country flush with cash. Tax the shit out of them. And let's get our population up to 400 million. Why not? Exactly. I've been to Utah. I've been to Nevada. There's plenty of room.
All empty, right? But at the same time, I'm just as a fair warning to our Democrats there is going to be policies that are going to prevent less people will be able to come in, because you have to. There's going to be more of a gate, because that's what immigration policy does. It does slow down that process, and I just don't want you to start running around and going, you see, there's a new process. They're slowing down this pipe and they're slowing down this. The end goal is: are we going to protect the dreamers? Are you going to expand the dreamers? You need to do those. Those are.
Well, that's kind of what I mean. In that, with a doctrine, you're laying out new language, which brings new goals. That's kind of what I was thinking.
But the goals can't be open borders and decriminalizing borders and things like that. They can't be that. We can't go to that all the way to that end. And if we don't get that, then the whole thing is not. It's not perfect.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. But I would say that what we're facing right now is a processing issue.
It's a processing issue.
And we didn't have a decision on which side of the border things were going to be processed. If you took seriously immigration and said, all right, we're going to have to let some of these refugees in, build some campuses on the border to deal with it. Hire some new judges to sit there on the border in those facilities and go to work. What we've done is ignored these problems over and over and over again, and imagining that, maybe somebody else will fix it. But
then people just run in. And I really appreciate Mr. Clean. I'm surprised. I'm not surprised. I appreciate that you looked at the 1.9 trillion. You didn't get the $15, but you see the whole bill as this is going to improve the United States, and the lower class, the people that need the money, are going to get the money for the first time. It surprises me where the other 2.4 trillion went, because it certainly didn't go to the poor people. Right. So this time, the poor of the poor are going to get up to $16,000. It's going to change people's lives. Child poverty is going to get cut. It's a huge, huge plan, and we can't harp on small things that didn't get passed to lower the plan itself. And I appreciate you didn't do.
I mean, I'm still going to harp on the 15 all day long, but yeah, I mean, good things are good things, right? I'm not going to look at a $3,000 child tax credit and say that's bad. It's a great thing.
And we should have an argument on the $15. I think there is an argument to be made against some of it. I think there's an argument for it. I think there's some arguments against it. I think there's a nice median that you can find. You can ask for 15, but if you get 13, you should be pretty happy about it. And not go, it's not 15, because in the end, what you're doing is people that are getting $7 an hour or $10 an hour, whatever dollars, they're still getting a 50% raise, a huge raise. And if it's not 15, which would be perfect, it would improve a lot. It's still something better than nothing.
We're going to wrap it up. Yep, go ahead. Last couple comments here. Go ahead, Zach.
Ace, you're right. This is more of a conversation topic for a different time. I would just say the way that progressives view it is that $15 is the compromise. That's where a lot of us are coming from at this point. The way I like to look at it is $31,000 a year. That should be the floor for anywhere in America.
I guess my only concern is what ripple effect will it cause? I still view that there is a ripple effect that we're not talking about, and the ripple effect is there's multiple problems, and the problem is there's always jobs that are not designed to be careers. Like working in McDonald's is not designed for you to make. It's just not. That job is not designed for you to have a career in that. The problem is we don't have good paying jobs that are career path jobs. So my issue with 15 is what happens if you're in a decent job and you're already making 15? Then what happens to you when everyone else is making 15? Now you're making minimum wage and you've gone up to 15 from 10. Now there's a ripple effect. Now you have to go to your boss and go, the person working at McDonald's is making 15. I have a degree. I've worked here for 6 years. I'm making the same amount. And it is a fair question for that person. Now he wants 17. So there is a ripple effect in this. I don't have a good solution, but no one really talks about that portion of
Yeah,
it.
they do. Everyone talks about that.
Well, I think the biggest talking point is,
I mean, if an ambulance driver's making $15 an hour, if an ambulance driver's making $15 an hour, he's underpaid or she's underpaid. So the minimum wage is to raise the minimum, and then if that's the minimum, you're right. If I can make the same money at McDonald's flipping burgers or driving an ambulance, I'll go flip burgers. And then guess what? The salary for ambulance drivers just went up because there's an opening and they need to fill it, and they can't hire at minimum wage. The point is, that's I think part of the ramp up plan, as someone said in the comments. That's part of the reason why you ramp it up. So suddenly, just all of a sudden, whap! You know, everyone the floor goes from this curve of people's wages to all of a sudden, clunk. All these people now make 15, and yeah, this person here is like super high skilled, and this person all the way over here is like, you know, literally mucking stalls or something that anybody could do. Yeah, you got to make sure you can keep that curve and just escalate it.
But then it's also becomes a math problem, because then when you're saying you're going to raise taxes back to corporations where they used to be, which we all agree on, and you do 15, that's a pretty big hike on some.
No, it's a simple capitalistic solution, because now all the bottom income people all have more money. They're all going to go out and buy new cars and reduce their debt and spend money, go to the malls. Remember when we used to all go to the malls? So unless you have a crappy business model, everyone having more money, you should make a shit ton of money. Anybody selling anything to anyone, if the poorest people suddenly make twice as much money, that is great for you. If you sell gas, you sell donuts, you sell ice cream, you sell food, you sell coats, you sell school supplies. All the stuff we hear about that's not certain in these people's lives would suddenly become more certain because they could afford it. So yes, there's going to be some squeeze industry somewhere. I mean, we could talk about, ambulances. Okay, fine. Ambulances, they don't get, they have to charge a certain rate, and there's a certain number of them. But we could talk about it. But
it's just create. There is a.
It's much more direct trickle down. Trickle down.
Jeff, I think this is where this is a conversation for another.
I like to trust big businesses, and I know what they'll do. They'll cut, and they'll cut, and they'll cut, and then we get nothing. Versus, we could have gotten 13. Versus, we went with 15, and then the store goes, well, we want the same profits as we did last year because our stockholders want the same profits, and the only way we could do the same profits is if we fire one person to get the profit. That's how it always works. So I'm always worried that the big guy on top and the corporations, they'll get it back somehow, and it'll always hurt us.
Well, it's weird that we have less jobs now after such a big corporate tax cut, because they should have hired a bunch of people.
Do y'all think minimum wage should be different? This is a quick question, just real quick.
That's an interesting question.
Fair question.
Minors can't work full schedules, right? In most states, minors can't work a 40-hour week.
Right. I would say equal pay for equal work. That's just my answer. So no.
Yeah. If you're eligible to be in the workforce, you get paid.
And I believe most states say they can only work like 18 hours a week or something until you're 18. You can't.
Yeah.
Unless you're on a farm, Jeff, and then you can work until it's way past dark.
For free.
For your 18
for room
years.
For room and board.
Yep. All right, party people. I appreciate everybody being in on this thing. Very serious topic we talked about for most of this show tonight, which is racism and how it's flaring up, and it's a living problem. It's something we all have to deal with, and I'm not hiding from it anymore. I think I haven't been hiding from it, but we've got to make it part of our vernacular that we have a issue in this country. Racism is out of control, and it's been out of control for 200 plus years. It's been out of control since the origins of this thing,
1607 or whatever.
but we should be moving past some of this, and we're not. And so we're gonna stay on it. Zach, I appreciate you being here tonight. Ace, I thank you for not only being with us tonight, but also bringing the policy stuff from the Russia and the China piece. That to me is it. We forget about all the international stuff, and in most cases, that's the most important. Please include anti-Semitic in that court. Yep,
in that word.
Yeah, absolutely. And
to add to that statement, it's don't forget, you're always next. When they're done with this section
That's
of
right.
people, you're always next. So just because you're not being attacked right now, you're just up next. You're just
that's that issue of neighbor justice that it's time that I don't have justice. If these folks in Atlanta died yesterday in this or the other day in this way, I don't have justice either. You don't have justice either. If we don't have justice for all in this country, we don't have justice for anybody. Okay, we might be on the right side of the injustice today. We might be in the luxury of being not in the crosshairs of evil right now. But as Ace, what you just said, it'll come one day. So
it's also very likely that even the people on the Mayflower and the early French trappers and all those people all had their own racist baggage they brought to our country. So racism's existed since the first two cultures collided, I'm sure. So it's not going to be solved tonight, but we need to all, obviously things like violence have to be addressed. This is ridiculous.
So rock on, everybody. Have a safe and great week. Enjoy some March Madness if you get a chance to.
Get your vaccine. Cross wants to bring up cancel culture. Make sure you watch Kaepernick's original 15-minute speech.
That's a great idea, Cross King. Do that. Watch Kaepernick and take a knee.
God forbid you let private companies make their own decisions.
Right. No, don't do that. Nike should be burnt in the stake. Get your vaccines. Wear your masks.
Get your vaccine. Get your vaccine. Get your vaccine. Let's get past this thing so we can get on with everything else.
Try and keep your gatherings small until everyone's vaccinated.
Peace to everybody. Have a great night. See you Sunday night. Ace, be well. Zach, hang out. It's nighttime in the Pacific now, so you're free to go carousing outside. And Jeff, hang loose, dude. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.
See you.
See you.